Yo, what it do? It's your boy Codehova from Combinator. We're going to keep pushing on in iOS Hustla. In this video, it's going to be about Storyboard Segues and Unwind Segues. Alright, so let's open up Xcode, the project that we would have, and here it is. So let's just run it to see what we're working with. So let me just explain. So we're going to have two tabs, right? One is item 1 and the other is item 2. Item 1 is going to have like Roy G. Biv. It's just going to go all the way to blue. And where we have these segues where these buttons, I guess it's going to be better if I just show exactly what we're going to deal with. Alright, so on this first tab, we're going to have all these buttons that push on they're going to have push segues that go to new screens. And we're going to create a button here that's going to send us all the way back to item 1. You see, there's already an Unwind Segue built in to the tab bar controller, where if you press on whichever tab you press on, if you click it multiple times, it's going to take you back to the home, the initial view controller, the initial rooted view controller in that tab. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to programmatically create a unwind segue on the blue screen to go back to the red, just like that one button would do. Okay. And on the second is we have this push that's going to go to this next screen. I'm going to change the color, but we're also going to programmatically create a button that's going to also go back, just like that this navigation bar button is going to do. Okay, we're going to create a programmatic one in the screen. All right, so let's just change this. Let me change this up. So we have this view controller, and let's just change it to white. Let's go with, how about purple? Come on, change purple. It's acting a donkey. I hate how Xcode does this, but sometimes you have to just make that pop up. Damn. Come on, son. Okay, there you go. I have no idea what just happened. But again, this is just Xcode, man. This is just the name of the game. And what we're going to have is we're going to have a button in here. We're going to center it. Let's constrain it horizontally and vertically in the middle. There you have it. Okay, so let's just do the first one where we're going to also create a button. And let's constrain it in the middle. And since this is a blue background, let's change this text color to white. And we want this to unwind to red. Alright, so what do we have to do to work with unwind segues? Because as you see, this is the relationship from this navigation controller to this first view controller. Okay, this is a relationship. But this is a storyboard segue. And the type we're working with is a push. There's show detail, present modally, present as a popover. But when you're dealing with navigation controllers, which you're probably going to use most of the time, we're going to want to do a push segue. Each segue here, it's a push. Okay. So what we want to do is programmatically create an unwind segue that's going to, when you push this, it's going to send us back to red. So what we're going to want to do, right? What is this connected to? On the identity inspector, this is nothing. So we want to have a file for a red view controller and also a blue view controller. So let's go into our project. What you do here is you right click, control click, and we're going to add a new file. This new file, we're going to have a Cocoa Touch class. So when we're creating like new view controllers, new UI views, you see, it's going to be a subclass of, and this is what we want. But there are so many subclasses that you could choose. All right. So in this case, we're subclassing a UI view controller, and we're going to name this red view controller. Okay. So we're just going to, my bad for going through that fast. Let me do it one more time. Let's create one for blue. So it's going to be new file, Cocoa Touch class, and we're going to call this blue. Blue view controller. Let's press next. And it's going to ask you, where do you want to place this file that you just created? We're just going to stick with the defaults right now. When we become thoroughbreds, bigger hustlers in iOS, I'll show you how I do organization of files. But let's just be simple. Just create it in the project folder that we're working with. We create, and here we have it. We have the red and blue view controller. So let's go back into the storyboard, and if we select this blue view controller in the identity inspector, let's connect this with the blue view controller file. Once you put it in, it's gonna connect with the proper module automatically. And if we go to the red view controller, it's nothing. Let's change that to red, and boom, there you have it. So what we need to do is we need to set the red view controller as the Unwind Segue destination. It's kind of like telling the code compilation, this whole project, that this red view controller is a place that you would want to have an Unwind Segue happen. So this code right here, it's just default. You really don't need it until you really need it. All right. So what we want to do is we want to create an IB action. And it's going to be a function. I spelled IB action wrong. Func. And we're gonna have to give this a name. And this name, let's just be literal. Let's just say unwind to red. Okay. And what we do, open parentheses, and we're gonna put in segue, UI storyboard segue. That's what we have to do with an open and close curly brace. That's all you have to do. Easy as that. Easy as pie. And then what we do is we go to the main storyboard, and we're going to go into the blue view controller. We're going to hover over, we're going to select this yellow view controller button, and we're going to exit. What you do is you select this, hold control, and then we're going to hover over the exit button. That's what it is. This is the exit button. So we're going to hover over, select the exit, and then it's going to be like manual segue. What do you want to connect with? So once you press this, you select that, boom. On this blue view controller, we're going to have this Unwind Segue. Good. So this Unwind Segue, if we move from the identity inspector to the attributes inspector, we're going to be able to create an identifier for the storyboard Unwind Segue. And the identifier, let's just be simple. Let's say back to red. All right. And when you type in an identifier, identifiers are case sensitive. They have to be exactly what you create them to be when you use them in code. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this. And then on the blue view controller file, let's move back to there. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to create an IB action button. IB action func back to red. Open and close parentheses. There's no parameters that's going to go in. If you don't know what parameters are, you probably want to watch my course Pimpin' Swift. If you look in the description of this video, you'll be able to go to that course. It's free. I'll be giving you a game on how to work with Swift, because what we're writing here in this iOS Hustla course is Swift. So there's no parameters. We're just going to create a function. And what we're going to want to do is run a function called perform segue. With identifier, we're going to have to put in a string. And it's a string that we used when we created that unwind segue. So open and close parentheses, back to red. In the sender, we'll just set the value of nil. Okay? So let's run it. And while it runs, I'm just going to delete this did receive memory warning. I've never had to use it in my entire life. All right. So anyways, project is loaded. All these segues are happening just like we expect. But when we hit unwind to red, wait a second. What do you think we're missing? All right. So what we did is we created this IB action function. We created it correctly. I mean, we gave it a name. We're performing the segue, and the identifier is copied and pasted from our main storyboard file. Right? If we look at it, back to red, it's exactly the same. So let's look at our view controller. That's what was missing. We have the action of back to red, but it's not connected with any kind of control event. So what we want to do is we want to click on the outlet. I'm not sure if you call it outlet, but this is the action. We're going to want to hover over the button and we're going to drop. And it's going to ask us, which event do you want us to connect this button with this action? And the one we want to look for is touch up inside. Since you're a beginner, you might want to change. You might want to do an experiment on these different types of actions and see how it works on a device, because each one is different. But the one that we're used to, 90% of the apps, the buttons are connected with touch up inside. So that's what we're working with. All right. We're letting it run. So we're going to do push segues. We can go back with the nav bar, with the nav controller, but we're going to push, 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 unwind to red. There you go. That's the unwind segue. So with what you do on unwind segues there's times when you have users that are going to move through a stack of navigation controller, a single navigation controller, and have them push into different views. But so for example, it's like, let's say this screen, it just showed a bunch of news articles, and a user pressed to a certain section. In a certain section, they move to a certain day. And to a certain day, they move to a certain article. And from a certain article, they dug down into a different article. And there was a button that said, like, I'm done reading this whole section. Let's go back. They would press unwind, and they would go all the way to the home that you set it to be. And how we did it is first, in our home screen, basically, for this navigation controller, we have created an unwind segue by creating an IB action with a function name of whatever you want to call it. It's always good to be descriptive. And the parameter that you put in to this function is just a segue of the type of UI Storyboard Segue with open and close curly braces. There's no code you need to put in the middle, in between, unless there are functions that you want to have run when this function is executed. And then on the destination where we're going to want to run that segue, we have to first create we first have to go into this blue view controller, create the exit, and once you create the exit, you're going to get this right here, an unwind segue. You're going to create an identifier, and then if you go into blue view controller, you create the IB action, you perform a segue with that identifier, and then you attach this IB action to whatever button you may have on your screen. So once you do that, we're able to push, 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 and then unwind. Bam. There you go. So that's the unwind segue. And we explained what pushes are. We explained the unwind. Let's talk about programmatically going back on a. Let's talk about programmatically going back. See, right now it does nothing. but we want this button here to do the same thing as the nav button, back button bar. All right? It's your boy, Codehova, Fly Combinator, working on becoming iOS hustlers. All right, Joe. Live streams at 5 p.m. on Sundays. Peace.